Hello and welcome to LemsleySpeaks. This is my poetry dedicated YouTube channel in which I will hopefully be sparking some debate through the sharing of my original pieces of poetry and the discussions around them. I'll also be releasing videos that promote the work of other poets out there, so keep your eyes out for those as well. If you enjoy the content, you like my material, hit the like button, you subscribe. You can also find a lot more of my written poetry on Instagram at Lemsley Novels. But for right now, let's jump right in. This poem is one of mine and it's called Mannequin Marriage. We wed at gas mark 9. High on the cliffside we fried, we burnt like sinners, and tried to tie the knot. 'Neath blue dome, white cross, white hot. Thank God for the slow growing cold between us. Blind to my bride by the sweat in my eyes, I mumbled through vows of unorthodox tongue, as the sun burnt my shoes to the sole. Later, under Santorinian sunset, I shan't forget how they sung, and yet my heels, they stung as I went through the paces. I danced our first dance with bruised, blistered feet to a song that wasn't written for us. 'Twas a mirage of a marriage, half-heartedly forged, and formed the foundations for an indifferent divorce. Now, we walk separate paths. Tentatively, I tried to refine my laughter, which I lost to false fairy tales in our happily never after. So I think it's pretty clear what the topic of this poem is about. It's about a marriage that doesn't work. Specifically, my marriage that really didn't work. When we divorced, we weren't allowed to divorce until we had lived separately for 2 years. And then we were able to prove to the courts that we'd been separated for that amount of time, and it effectively kept the costs of the divorce down. It was still about 600 quid. But in this day and age, when a person can choose their own identity, how they want to self-identify, choose their sexuality, we live in the age of same-sex marriages, which is all absolutely brilliant, I do feel that two consenting adults should be able to get divorced without having to jump through as many hoops. I don't know. What do you think? I do wonder about how many people out there are stuck in a similar situation going, we just want to divorce now. Why aren't we allowed to divorce? When you picture a strong and stable relationship, what does it look like in your head? How do you imagine it? We got married in Santorini on the cliffside. It was about 40 degrees, and I talk about how I was blind to my bride by the sweat in my eyes. Sweat was pouring out of me in rivulets, and I had to keep rubbing my face, blinking away the sweat. I talk about how I mumbled through vows of an orthodox tongue. Our service was run by a Greek chap who had very, very poor grasp of the English language. So when I was repeating the wedding vows, I was actually just trying to imitate the strange sounds that he'd made and hoped that I was approximating the right words of my wedding vows. The heat was so hot that I felt at any moment I might need to just take a break and step out from the actual ceremony and go and stand in the shade and take my shoes off, because it felt like the leather of my shoes was being molten into the flesh of my feet. That is not how I pictured my perfect wedding to be. Sweaty. And it brought to mind the fact that I had no idea what I wanted my perfect wedding to be like. It begs the question, did I want to get married in the first place? So if you're about to embark on a marriage, you think that you found the one just because there isn't any animosity or trouble in your relationship, don't forget to actually ask yourself, do you want to get married? Here's a question for you. What are the ingredients of a toxic relationship? My ex-wife and I, we found ourselves in a toxic relationship, but it didn't involve any kinds of abuse, physical, emotional, psychological. There wasn't any infidelity. We were both kind and caring. We both tried to support each other. Our relationship became toxic because the love between us fell apart. we got to a point where we looked at one another and realised that we weren't able to provide for the needs of that other person. But both of us kept on trying to change. We kept on trying to change ourselves to help the other out. And eventually we looked back and realised that we'd completely lost touch with who we were as individuals. And the love had died. A relationship is based on two individual people, and those individuals need to be absolutely happy within themselves in order for that relationship to work. So if you looked at your relationship now, how happy are you with yourself in that relationship? And if you find that you're living a lie on any level, then I'd urge you to reflect on whether that relationship is right or not. When I wrote this poem, it gave me an awful lot of perspective, and it helped me to organise my thoughts and get over the difficulty of losing that relationship. I urge anyone out there who is going through a difficult relationship, if you haven't picked up a pen and got your thoughts out of your head and onto the page, then give it a go. Some people don't write about their own personal situations because they might feel scared about what truths it will bring up. And yeah, it is a bit difficult, and it does expose awkward stuff that you have to confront. But by confronting those things, are we not gaining better self-knowledge? You don't have to write a poem, write a story, write anything. End up doodling your thoughts out in picture form if you want. It's a great way to sort your head out. One thing that I'm very proud of between my ex-wife and I is that we were brave enough to make that change. It was quite easy for us to separate in some ways because we didn't have a mortgage, we didn't have kids. That would complicate things massively. My heart aches for you if you're in a situation like I was with my ex, but there are those added complexities in there that makes things much, much harder. But being brave and deciding this isn't right and separating, it was the right decision, and it had to be done because the other option would have been to settle for misery. I might redraft the last line of this poem. I talk about that I lost my laughter to false fairy tales in our happily never after. As a poet, I think it's a bit cheesy. I'm not altogether happy with it. You might like it, who knows? It is what it is, and it's out there now. And although this poem is very melancholic in its tone all the way through, really, I hope that there's some hope in there that perhaps you can pick up on. My ex-wife and I don't have a happily ever after. We chose for a happily never after as individuals, and by doing that, we've opened up the possibility of finding our separate happily ever afters in future with other partners or by ourselves. Who knows? And I'm proud of that. I've got a lot more knowledge about what a good positive relationship will look like for me. I certainly won't be getting married in 40 degrees heat if I remarry in future. Hell no. And so, you know, every relationship breakdown is hard to go through, but you have to be true to yourself, and you have to take stock, and you have to ask yourself difficult questions. If you want to talk about relationships, relationship problems, toxic relationships, you can reach out to me, no problem at all. Leave a comment, I'll always get back to you. If you want to talk more privately, direct message me on Instagram. You can find all my poetry and get in touch with me at Lemsley Novels. And just a massive thank you for listening, guys. Tune in for my next video where I'll be promoting some other excellent poets out there. And stay tuned, hit like, subscribe, and there'll be some more of my poetry coming in the near future. LemsleySpeaks. Much love.